Hello, hello. Good day, millions of viewers across the galaxy. Speaking to you from the Klingon homeworld of, I actually don't know. So, speaking to you from North London, Camden Town, the Roundhouse Works. Woo, the cool studio. Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Good, thanks. I have a bit of a cough, but everything is swell at the moment. And to your point, yeah, on the Klingon homeworld of Camden is a nice place, nice views. It's a really trendy part of the galaxy.
Yeah, very trendy, very hipster. I've just got to say, Josh is probably going to start coughing again in a minute, so let's be off to a good start. But here we are. We're here to talk about Loki Season 2. Oh, yeah. I've got to say, love talking about Season 1. Mm-hmm. Can't wait for Season 2. I've got a full rundown. I'm going to go episode by episode and smash it out. Can't bloody wait. Can't bloody wait. Let's see if we have any...
I am inevitable.
Great soundboard. Oh, Thanos, you'll always be in my heart. So, let's dive straight into it and start with episode 1. So I'll give a quick overview. So, in the past, the TVA attempts to apprehend Loki while he is uncontrollably warping across time in their headquarters. In the present, Loki reunites with Mobius and warns him of the threat posed by the many variants of He Who Remains, the TVA's creator. Concurrently, General Dox, who's some random new character that appears out of nowhere, has several TVA hunters arm themselves ostensibly to find Sylvie, who caused the sacred timeline to branch after killing He Who Remains. Loki and Mobius meet a TVA technician called Ouroboros, who deduces that Loki is time-slipping, a phenomenon possibly caused by branching timelines dangerously overloading the temporal loom. To save Loki, Ouroboros instructs Mobius to approach the temporal loom with a temporal aura extractor device to extract Loki from the time stream as Loki prunes himself. Loki time-slips to the future, where TVA is being evacuated as the loom goes critical. He encounters Sylvie before he is pruned by someone at the last minute. In the present, Mobius successfully pulls Loki from the time stream and they set out to find Sylvie. In a mid-credits scene, Sylvie enters a branch timeline in Oklahoma, 1982, and visits McDonald's. Woo!
That's one thing you can say about the series, a lot of product placement.
Yeah, definitely. McDonald's, I can't imagine how much they paid for that. And also, like in the advertising clips of the series, you see Sylvie in the full McDonald's outfit. So, pretty much. Some cool things about this episode. This Ouroboros character, you might recognize him. He was the little kid in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Also, the Goonies as well, the kid who had all the gadgets.
Oh, I can't remember the Goonies, but I know that's a Christmas special, isn't it?
It is.
And we are coming close to Christmas. You can see I'm wearing my Christmas jumper. Whilst,
my Celtics hoodie, yes.
Yeah.
It's the season.
Celtic Football Club, or that's a Looney Tunes thing?
The NBA. So the NBA did like a crossover with the Looney Tunes. So then they used Tasmanian Devil for the Boston Celtics.
Oh, right. Okay. Very cool. Well, nice jumper. Jealous somewhat. So going back
well, you do have Warhammer.
Yeah.
So I'm jealous as well.
Yeah, no, but I'm a true fan. You only like the fantasy side. So, any thoughts on episode 1?
I would say one thing I really did like about episode 1 is the fact that you had the time slipping and the fact that you were also having to like understand as Loki understood what was actually happening. It was like, where was he? When was he? Which was also a key element of it. And I think also I really enjoyed when they brought in Ouroboros into the episode. And the fact that he's just like some
cool
chill technician is like, oh, yes, well, that isn't supposed to work. That doesn't work here. But then Loki's like, but it's obviously happening because it's happening to me. But it shouldn't be happening, but it is happening.
Yeah, and then the way he just fixes stuff, like Mobius is it Mobius that gets into the suit and there's a crack in it? And he's like, he just duct tapes it. He just puts duct tape over it. Very, very quirky. Again, a lot of quirky Loki humor going on here. And I did love how you were just kind of thrust straight back into it, like the TVA's in crisis, and you have all these factions within the TVA. So you had that random new general who appears with a thick Scottish accent, who's a great actress. I've seen her in a lot of stuff. And they're going off just trying to continue TVA stuff. But then you've also got the looming threat of Judge, what's her name?
Renslayer.
Renslayer, yeah. I can't remember if she was in this episode, to be honest, but she does pop up in the next episode, the one afterwards. But yeah, cool. Very nice. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the one way that they did try and do Loki was that they said it would be it's one series but split into two. And you can kind of really see that there is no like gap. It's a full-on continuation of they've killed he who remains. Loki then arrives back in the TVA, and it's like everything is hectic and in mayhem. And then I remember always thinking that maybe he's gone to a different timeline.
Right.
But actually finding out in the episode, no, it's that he's gone to another place in time. Yeah. So it also means that the TVA itself is outside of all the timelines. And that I thought when people thought,
where it's actually located. Yeah.
But in fact, it's actually, so instead of like thinking that he's in an alternate like TVA in a different timeline, it's actually the same TVA, but just different place and time. That's why you sometimes see like the three statues of the three aliens, or having the statue of like...
the original aliens who are the timekeepers, but actually were fake.
Yeah. And then having like the statue of Kang as well. So that threw fans off. But then watching it, we realized, no, it's just he's gone to the past, and that's what the TVA looked like in the past.
Yeah, which is interesting, especially remembering how season 1 left on a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Because
he meets Mobius and he doesn't know what's going on. I was like, oh, crap. But then this time slipping thing happens. And I've got to say, that looks really painful. That time slipping. Yeah, like I saw a great meme of just someone pause their TV at like the right moment and time slipping. It's just the funniest looking thing. But obviously, I can't show that on here. But yeah, a good episode. Off to a good start. I missed the bloody Sylvie thing. Like, I hate this Marvel end credits thing. Because they stopped. I think they've stopped doing it now. But usually, expect at the end of the movie they'd do it, or at the end of a series. But then on the first episode, a mid-credits one, like, very annoying. I don't know how to feel about this. It's like, do you like wait out? Because if you actually look, each episode's about like, I think about like 45 minutes long, and like quite a lot of that, a decent chunk, like about 5 minutes, is credits. Because you have the first bit of credits, which is that retro Fallout looking thing with like the retro design of the place, and then the credits. But then it actually goes to the proper credits. And it's like the people who wait to the end live by this philosophy.
A small price to pay for salvation.
I was just setting myself up to use that one.
And it seems like it's longer as well, because now it's on Disney Plus. You also have to have the different languages that have been subtitled as well.
That's true.
Especially if it's like being like voiced over by many different languages. You've also got those people who have to do it for every single character. So you're like waiting 5 minutes, and then, because I think I did it for the first series that came out on Disney Plus, but I was like, well, there's nothing. I'm just might as well just stop. But to your point, it is kind of like annoying, because like if it's in the cinema, it's like you've already like set that time and you're expecting something. But if it's like a TV series, when the next episode's ready to watch, you're not really waiting for the end credits to pass.
Well, exactly.
You're also, like, you know what? Next episode.
The pop-up comes up on Netflix, but I don't know if that comes up on Disney Plus. Would they skip the credits?
It does from time to time. And like it's like, skip the credits to go to the next episode.
It's a bit frustrating. A minor frustration. Speaking of Marvel in different languages, do you want to hear Spanish Thanos?
Yes, let's hear it.
Nope, doesn't work. Never mind. Oops. Oops, it does work. Okay, do you want to hear Spanish Thanos?
Yes.
Nice. Well, that was worth our time, wasn't it? Yo soy inevitable. You see, we like to branch out on the show.
Just quickly, it just has in my mind like this Thanos being like a mucha libre. Like full on.
What, like a luchador?
Yeah, luchador.
I mean, he's got the muscles for it too, and that chin, he could crack a nut with that chin. Bloody hell. Okay, anything else on episode 1, or should we go on to episode 2?
Oh, we can go to episode 2, yeah.
Okay, so episode 2. Loki, Mobius, and Hunter B-15 find and capture Hunter X5 in London, 1977, on the Sacred Timeline, where he lives as a film actor called Brad Wolfe. Again, Hunter X5 new character you didn't see in season 1. Under interrogation, he admits to abandoning Dox's mission and reveals Sylvie's location. He just wanted, it's like in a Matrix, you know, some people just want to live in bliss and forget about the real world, which is horrible and gross. Meanwhile, Ouroboros attempts to repair the loom to safely accommodate the branching timelines, but discovers he cannot access it without help from the missing Miss Minutes, or He Who Remains Aura. Loki, Mobius, and Wolf travel to Oklahoma and find Sylvie working in McDonald's. Loki tells her of their encounter in the TVA's future and asks for assistance to figure out what would happen. But Sylvie refuses to involve herself, what a surprise, with the organization. After Wolf proclaims the group is in mortal danger, Sylvie enchants him, forcing him to reveal Dox's plan to simultaneously eliminate and destroy the branching timelines with reset charges. Sending Wolf back into custody, Loki and Mobius and Sylvie capture Dox, but her plan has largely succeeded and some of her loyalists have escaped. As TVA receptionist Casey, who was in the first series, great character, tracks the rogue Ravona Renslayer's tempad on one of the remaining branching timelines, Sylvie declares that the TVA is rotten and returns to McDonald's with He Who Remains tempad in her possession. So, interesting episode. I think Loki's looking really cool and badass in this episode.
Yeah, especially the scene in London when Wolf is thinking to himself, when he actually thinks he's gotten away, and it's just these random guys who are picking a fight with him, and it's like, no, they're all Loki's projections. And I think because he's been in the TVA so long, we've forgotten like he can use magic.
Yeah,
like because when he used it again, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like in the TVA, they've got like a clause that they can't use magic, so magical people can't use their powers within. Hence why Sylvie couldn't use hers, and the reason why Loki couldn't use his. But the fact that now he's no longer in the TVA, he can use his powers.
Did they mention that in
extent.
season 1? Because they definitely mentioned it in season 2 at one point. But
I think they kind of like implied it when he tried to use his powers and it didn't work. And then I think also like when they had like one of the Infinity Stones as like a paperweight, and you were like, yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, it can only work in its specific universe.
Ah, fair. Yeah, that was such a great scene in episode 1.
The guy's like, I've got a whole drawer full of them.
The existential dread on him, on Loki afterwards, just like, wow, my life is meaningless. Get over it, Loki. Mona.
And I think one of the things I did like about the first 2 episodes, especially episode 2, you really actually saw that there was an actual nicer side to Loki. And you saw, like, with Mobius when he was trying to, like, interrogate Wolf.
That was a funny
Mobius was, like on the edge.
He was originally the calm one. He was telling Loki to remain calm. Yeah.
And it was like something just snapped within him, like, you know what? This prick's going to get it today. This fucker's going to get it today. And then it was, like, Loki, the one who had to actually calm him down. Like, but throughout season 1, it had actually been the opposite. And it kind of felt like throughout, we also mentioned later, throughout the series, it was if Loki had a purpose and saw it through every single episode.
Glorious
and was like,
purpose.
Yeah, like he purposely, like when people were trying to like divert themselves, he's like, no, we need to stay on the course, which is saving the TVA so we can save all of reality. Yeah,
exactly. He comes into his own, doesn't he? And let's not spoil what we talk about the last episode, which was bloody amazing.
It was.
But he does come into his own, whereas before is Mobius leading Loki, now it's Loki leading Mobius. That interrogation scene was great because the stuff that Brad guy throws at Loki, like, you're a villain, stop trying to be a good guy. And I had this whole feeling, this whole way through this series, that Loki would become He Who Remains, the new leader of the TVA.
I had the same feeling.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. And I saw fan theories online, and I was like, it makes sense. But I was like, will he become He Who Remains as in a sort of a depressing but benevolent, like, someone has to do it way, it's not good? Or will he actually take up his evil villain again and do it for power? But I was thinking it was more the first way, but either way, it didn't work out that way. Although, kind of. We'll get to that point shortly. Again, that interrogation scene, the good cop, bad cop thing. You like thought it was Mobius being good cop, and then it's like, totally switch. Mobius really likes pie.
He does.
See, we had the good insights on this show.
And I think I think they said like the actual people that they are linked to, they have like memories. Because like for example, Mobius always talks about jet skis.
Yeah.
And you then see later on in the series
Which
how
is
that relates
great.
to it. And then also, I've forgotten what the what's Hunter 15.
Hunter B15, yeah.
Hunter B15 always cares about the people in the TVA, those who work under her, those who follow her orders. She cares about the TVA, and then you later on in the series see why, because who she actually is and would have been is someone who actually cares about the well-being of others.
Yeah, and she has that motive. She's very, you see her sort of come into her own as a persuader. Like when she's talking to one of the generals, he says, "You persuaded me." So, yeah, very cool. Bit of character development. And we'll have a talk about what we think would possibly could happen if there is Loki season 3. Yeah, how much did McDonald's pay for advertising? Like, wow, probably a lot. And it's funny because it seems like people change, but Sylvie is the most stubborn individual in this whole show because she hates the TVA, and in all fairness, it's traumatized. It's ruined her life since childhood, and she's been on a run ever since. So I could understand why, but when in this episode, you see all those timelines getting shut down.
Yeah.
She sees it as sort of genocide and stuff, and she's like so against the TVA, and it's like, you persuaded me back in, and look at this, it's a mess. So then she walks off again, which I find kind of annoying, and it's also because this whole series, it takes her until the final episode to realize she has screwed everything up by killing He Who Remains.
Yeah.
If they just kept He Who Remains as alive, yeah, okay, not great, but it's a necessary evil. But we'll have a talk about that next. Okay, anything else on episode 2?
I would say the development of Casey as well, as a character that actually you see later on is a major figure in the series is really nice.
Yeah, I suppose. I always thought they'd just be like a random side note character you'd never appear again, but they were a full-on recurring characters, so we'll take that on. Damn, that pie looked good in this episode, though. Was it a kiwi pie, maybe?
Just quickly on that, like, how do they make food? Is it that they've got, like, copies of it? And then similar to, like, I think what they do in Star Trek, that they can have a machine that can make it for you? So maybe that's what they have. Like
Miss Minutes probably has somehow got programming for that.
Or imagine, like, if they've got, like, a template of a pie, and then they search all of time for that exact same template, and then just
variants.
Steal it, and then steal variants of the pie. And
Even
bring
the pie in a TVA is a variant. Oh my god, this is crazy.
But imagine like someone sitting like, "What? I swear I had an extra slice," and then that's where all the times we think we have leftover food. That's where it's all gone. It's all gone to the TVA.
Yeah, you just blame your flatmate that's actually gone to the TVA. I wouldn't blame him. Pie's pie. Fair enough. Episode 3, now this was an interesting one because rather than the usual intro, it goes with like an 1800s style music, like really old-fashioned style. Really cool. Felt kind of like Westworld a little bit, where they like change things up for one episode. So the synopsis is, Miss Minutes and Renslayer travel to Chicago, 1868, to secretly drop the TVA guidebook, which we'll find out Ouroboros has, to a young Victor Timely, a variant of He Who Remains, who informed Miss Minutes about this plan before his death, as in He Who Remains. They then travel to 1893 to Chicago World's Fair on this branch timeline, where Loki and Mobius arrive tracking Renslayer's tempad. There they see Timely presenting his temporal loom prototype. Timely then has 4 groups chasing him: Loki and Mobius, who want to use his order to fix the loom; Renslayer and Miss Minutes, who want him to take his variant's place with them at his side, and also maybe something else. Damn. Miss Minutes. Sylvie, who just wants to kill him to prevent his rise to power, which is probably the simplest one. And, well, a capitalist.
Yes, a bunch of capitalists.
Yeah, a horrible capitalist. Timely escapes the fair with Renslayer and Miss Minutes, although Miss Minutes convinces Timely to abandon Renslayer. At Timely's Wisconsin laboratory, he turns Miss Minutes off as she professes romantic love for him, which is just nuts. Renslayer, Loki, and Mobius and Sylvie arrive, with Sylvie gaining control. Seeing Timely's fears, Sylvie allows Loki to take him back to the TVA, then sends Renslayer to the Citadel at the end of time, with Miss Minutes being brought along, and as she finds he who remains decaying corpse, Miss Minutes reveals a secret about Renslayer. So, initial thoughts of this episode.
I would say this was my favorite episode
No, really?
from Loki
Okay.
so far.
Why?
I think one, because it linked to things that actually happened. Like there was like world fairs. I know there was some in the United States and in Europe. I think one might have been in Asia, and like the whole world fairs were like to do with like arts and science. It was like a convention where people of arts and scientists would come and share their inventions, and everyone would bask in
Wasn't
art.
like countries showing off as well?
Yes. So kind of like countries showing off. It's kind of like the Olympics, but for science and art.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it was like people debating and debating different scientific ideologies and theorems and theories, showing off inventions. So like, you know how you've got like the tech conventions, like especially the one that had like Steve Jobs, Microsoft, Bill Gates at them at the same time. And they said that was a big one, especially because I think one of them was when Steve Jobs launched Apple and kind of like used that as a spurn to IBM, because IBM were the major players when it came to like technology and
back in the
computers.
day, yeah.
And I think I really like that aspect, and I like the aspect of like the fact that everyone's like Victor Timely, who's this really powerful being who's a variant of Kang the Conqueror, a variant of He Who Remains, is basically a con man who's basically has inventions, but unfortunately the tech hasn't caught up with his
prototypes.
Yeah, of course.
I would say he's a con man. I think he actually comes across as quite honest in this. I think, or does he con someone in that?
I think so. What he does is that he cons the people to buy his actual devices.
Yeah,
because like remember the loom ends up blowing up.
Yeah,
and then that's why he was such in a rush to have someone pay for it. And that's why when the person they were bidding for different prices, he was like, he gave that man money for thank you for driving up the price. And then he's like, we must leave now.
Yeah.
We must go.
Time to go. Yeah.
And then I really liked that scene. And it was if like the main point of the episode, which I really liked, was that everyone was like, this is what Victor Timely is, and this is what we want to make him. And the fact he ends is like, but this is my life. I can choose, and I should be able to choose what I want to do and what I know what to do. And I think that's what convinced Sylvie not to kill him, because he's like, she constantly professes that we are not, that things aren't set in stone, things can change.
And that's her philosophy.
And that's her philosophy. And the fact that Victor Timely has actually said it to her, and like, if she then kills him, she'll then be a hypocrite. She'll be a hypocrite, because then she's saying, because of the knowledge he's learnt, he will now become He Who Remains. But that's still his choice. He can choose if he wants to or not.
It remains to be seen.
Yeah. And it's just, I think, especially the scene like with Miss Minutes, and I was just like, when she first started talking to him, I was like, where is this going? And then when she's like, he never gave me a body, I was like, oh no. And I was just watching it with Jeffrey, and I was like, this is basically kind of like Frankenstein. Like,
that was very freaky, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I quite liked that twist, because I was like, Miss Minutes seemed like, what's her? Because she's like an AI, but does she have feelings? Does she have emotions? Does she have something negative going on? In the way she convinces Victor Timely to ditch Renslayer, which is interesting. Well, you finish what you're saying, because I have a lot of questions about this episode.
Yeah, and the fact that I think also you see that Victor Timely is very impressionable.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things you actually start to see later on in the episodes with this character, is that he is someone who's very intelligent and very smart, but is also very impressionable. And I think that's probably why He Who Remains picked him to be the person to use. And like even Victor Timely's actually in the comics, and he's a variant of Kang that basically sets up like a businessman similar to Tony Stark. And then he basically sets up, I think it's called like Timely Industries. And he basically uses his future tech to then build up stuff in the 20th and 21st century. And
how does he live for that long just using his technology?
I think just through his tech, and
Right.
also because I think he can also time travel. So technically, if you can time travel, you technically don't age.
Yeah, because then I was thinking that isn't when He Who Remains explains Kang, like he's a scientist in like the 23rd century, who discovers that there's universes layered on each other, and then
Yeah.
that's how the variants begin. I was like, well, why is Victor Timely he's born in like the 1800s? Like, does that mean that maybe Kang actually originally was from the 1800s, or just
Yeah.
this random variant?
And I think that's the weird thing with Kang in the comics is that there is a version of Kang that you see like in the Ant-Man film, Quantumanium, that is from ancient Egypt.
Yeah,
And you've also
what's
got-
his name? There's a name, Immortus. Oh no, is that the other one?
Oh no,
I can't remember.
Immortus is the full-on evil adult.
Yeah, with the weird
Kang,
hat. Yeah,
I think he's Ramen Tut, I believe.
Ramen Tut.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So he's the one who's based in ancient Egypt. So I think what happens is that because of time travel,
They
and each of them
okay.
understand and get a form of time travel, that they technically can be anywhere they want to be.
Are you trying to tell me they're inevitable?
Yes.
All right, enough of that.
And funnily enough, they say like there are like two people, you could kind of say three in the Marvel universe, which are inevitable. So you've got like
I'm not going to push that button again.
Thanos, you have Kang because of time travel, so he can be anywhere and point in time. And the annoying part is that if you kill a version of him, you could fight a variant of him who's got time travel and space travel, so he can travel from different universes. Or you could kill a older version of him, so then you still has his younger version who could find out you've just killed him and then changes his actions. So therefore, you've killed that one, but the one that's still in time can then teleport to the future. So he skipped his death.
I feel like I need a temporal loop to understand
It is
that.
hard to understand. And like the last one is Ultron.
Well, he's a variant of Kang?
No. He's inevitable.
Oh, he's inevitable.
Because
okay.
it's like something adding in like technology is inevitable. And
Yeah.
if Ultron is basically a virus, computer virus, and with modern technology and how more advanced we become, could you really get rid of Ultron?
And if we go back to the Dark Ages, we can.
But then the issue would be is that time will still progress towards...
And eventually we'll go towards technology. Oh, well, we've got to do something about that. It's like in a Dune, they don't allow computers. They suppress all AI and stuff.
Actually, funny enough, that reminds me, the TVA don't allow robots either. So what if the reason they don't allow robots is because of Ultron? Because I remember in the beginning of season one, they asked him, "Oh, are you a robot?" And he said no. And then you saw like on a pile on the side, you had like robots that had just gone through the scanner and had been like destroyed.
Yeah, you're
so
right.
it could be that the TVA and He Who Remains knows the power of Ultron and other robots like him. So therefore, there are no robots apart from Miss Minutes, which is an AI in the TVA.
Yeah, that's a good point. I totally forgot about because I remember the question they asked Loki, and Loki's like, how many people don't know they're robots? It's like, good question, actually. Okay. So some questions I have is Victor Timely are there such thing as good variants of Kang? So it seems like Victor Timely
Yes.
is, are there others? Is He Who Remains a good variant of Kang?
In the comic books, Victor Timely's a businessman, so it's not really good and evil. It's more like
Cash money.
basically yes.
Yeah, boy.
And there is a variant which is a hero called Iron Lad.
Iron Lad.
So basically, he finds out that he will eventually become a Mortis and become a full-on evil being that's focused on conquering the universe and kills trillions of lives. So then he's like, I don't want to become this. I'm going to become a good guy to prevent myself from becoming that person. But the issue with like Marvel and when it comes to time travel is that, especially if you can time travel, is that a Mortis will still exist because even though Iron Lad has changed his ways, he still exists through the time, basically through the timeline. So, it's a really annoying line, but when in Avengers Endgame, when Hulk was like, when, funny enough, Ant-Man said, why don't we just go to the past and just kill Thanos? And then the Hulk was like, that doesn't work because when you go to the past, then the future is your past and the past is your present.
Again,
I know. It is annoying, especially it's not as simple as like Doctor Who, where time is like so linear that you can alter events. But like with Marvel, it's like if you move from the future, if you go to the future is now your present, and your present's the past. Everyone fully understands that. But if you go back to the past is your present, the future is your past.
So it's perspective, yeah.
And that's the major thing. So even though Iron Lad became a good superhero, because Immortus can time travel, Immortus still exists because he can be outside of time and also could teleport himself to a time before Iron Lad knew that he was a hero. And therefore, because he's made that choice, you've got multiple variants within it. So there are good variants of Kang.
That's good to know. Wow, great choice of words on my part. Victor and Ravona don't seem to have a romance as they do in the comics. Is this because, this is Victor Timely, he's not He Who Remains. So, this variant is different as what would have happened in the comics. This whole show's a variant, really, isn't it? Because it's not actually what happens in the comics.
Yeah. Because I was surprised about that because I thought, but technically, this is because they did show at the end of the episode, so we can discuss it. So technically, they were a couple, and it kind of felt like they were an item, kind of like she was his general that he used to conquer all of time. But then he got to the stage of like a Thanos and was like, if I really want to be in charge of this and control time, I must lose all form of attachments.
A small price to pay for salvation.
Yeah. And the price he paid, well, technically he didn't really pay the price, they all did, was then wiping all the memories of everyone in the TVA. What he really should have done was also wipe Miss Minutes as well, because then there would have been no witnesses.
Some jealous psycho computer. Yeah, that'd be on edge. That was pretty funny. Did some research on Jonathan Majors, who plays Victor Timely, Kang the Conqueror. I won't comment anything about his legal case at the moment because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with that. One interesting thing about Majors as an actor is he said that the person who inspired him to become an actor was Heath Ledger as the Joker in The Dark Knight. So what a crossover there. Someone in Marvel being inspired by DC. Do you think Stan Lee is rolling in his grave at the thought of that? Oh, God, that's dark to say.
I don't think so, because but to begin with, yes, because for those who don't know, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, who formed Marvel, were both in DC, but then DC didn't like their comics because they were too colourful. They didn't really like what they looked like. So then they set up their own comic books. But then there have been crossovers. Like, there's been crossovers with like the Justice League and the Avengers. I think there was like a really cool scene, like with the Joker and the Red Skull.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Joker was like, I'm crazy, but I even still hate Nazis. And I think that was like a really cool scene. And I think it'll be really hard because like Warner Brothers owns DC and Marvel own Disney. But to have a crossover, that would be amazing. Because there are comics where both have crossed over. And I think there have been comics as well when the Ninja Turtles have crossed over into Marvel, because the main villain for the Ninja Turtles is the Shredder. So for the Ninja Turtles, their main villain is someone called the Shredder.
It's basically this Shredder.
Basically, he shreds people with his blades. A really good fighter. Like, he is also he's also a Daredevil villain. He's been in a Daredevil comic, so there's also been crossovers that way.
Maybe that's a way to save this Marvel fatigue or superhero fatigue that's going on. You just combine them together, because I'd probably watch that, even though I'm a bit fatigued. Although I've got to admit, Loki was fantastic. Let's move on.
Yes.
Although, again, just one thing. You hand me the patent and I'll handle production. I really hope there's a spin-off for this random capitalist villain in this episode. He's a highlight of the series, I'd argue.
Yes.
Okay, so episode 4, Heart of the TVA. Minutes reveals that in the past, Renslayer commanded He Who Remains' army. He proposed that Renslayer lead the TVA with him. Then he had Miss Minutes erase the memories of Renslayer and other TVA employees. As the temporal loom reaches catastrophic failure, Loki and his allies attempt to use Timely and Ouroboros' throughput multiplier to fix it. It is revealed that the source of Ouroboros' knowledge is Timely himself, creating an ontological paradox, which is something I was going to ask you about. Renslayer and Miss Minutes attempt to take over the TVA, approaching the detained Wolf, Docs, and her loyalists for help. Only Wolf agrees, who's that weird Brad guy.
Yeah.
Docs and her loyalists instead choose to be crushed to death by Miss Minutes. Wolf prunes Hunter D90 and kidnaps Timely. While staging a rescue, Sylvia and Loki encounter his time-slipping past self. Loki prunes his past self. Yeah, that was very strange. Ouroboros reactivates Miss Minutes and the TVA's magic-suppressing devices. This enables Sylvie to enchant Wolf. Well, not reenact it. He suppresses it still. And this enables Sylvie to enchant Wolf, controlling him to prune Renslayer. Timely is rescued and is able to restore access to the temporal loom, but the loom's increased temporal radiation spaghettifies him before he can launch throughout the multiplier. Throughput. Launch the throughput multiplier. God damn it. The temporal loom explodes and the blast wave just spreads towards Loki, Mobius, Sylvie, Theory 15, and everyone else in the TVN. Game over. And like, wow, what a great cliffhanger. I'd usually expect that on like maybe the second to last episode of the series or the final episode of the series, but that was brilliant. Didn't see that coming. Especially the spaghettification.
Yeah.
That's the word I actually had to look up because I saw it being talked about on like Facebook forums and stuff about Marvel and like spaghettification. No, great. Fantastic.
And I think everyone was like, well, because Morbius had done it earlier in the season, it's just going to be fine. Timely's just going to go down there. They're going to make it seem like it's hard. His suit will start to decay, but he'll finally reach it. And
It'll
then
be something heroic, yeah.
But it's like, no, it's like... And then
It was great, wasn't it? Really didn't see it coming. I thought it was going to be a bit like, oh, here we go, another great typical Hollywood scene of something heroic we've seen already, but it just, And the explosion as well. Wow. Good storytelling, good surprise.
And I think maybe it was episode 3 or maybe episode 2. No, I think it was either 3 or potentially 4, where they have Victor Timely and they're talking to Victor Timely. And as Loki is talking to Victor Timely, Ouroboros is talking to Mobius.
Yeah.
And it's as if like, as they're talking together, the information then catches up to Ouroboros.
Well, because of this ontological paradox. Yeah, that's why I thought it was strange, because, with the books, so He Who Remains, this is part of He Who Remains' plan. Renslayer goes all the way back in time to the 1800s, gives the young Victor Timely the book. Then that means Ouroboros has it. But then when
Ouroboros learns from Timely's works.
But then what happens in those books when they sign it together? Because remember, they sign it together when they meet. How would that work? And let's see if we can explain this without me needing my own tempads or whatever to sort of.
So the weird thing about the TVA is that it's similar to the TARDIS, that I believe that it's outside of time.
Okay.
So therefore, for example, if Loki was about to then be destroyed, he would still be fine because he's been taken outside of time.
So it's time slipping. Yeah.
So I think the situation you have is that with Loki, and not with Loki, with the book, that as the book is now outside of time, therefore it's safe. And also the fact that it is really weird because then you think about so I think the book was written by Ouroboros, who then gave it to Kang, who then asked Renslayer to then give it to Victor Timely, who then wrote the book, and then through time, Ouroboros learnt from Victor Timely to then develop the book. So then there's a loop there, but then because that means that He Who Remains had writ that out. So when he's got like the book and he's like, I know how things are supposed to go and I've written it all down. It's as if he planned that loop to just continually go around. So therefore he would have Victor Timely as his replacement if
Yeah.
need be, and also would have Ouroboros who could help fix anything to do with the TVA or the actual
Yeah, it's all
loop
part of his
itself.
plan. We need to get like a whiteboard in here next time we talk about something to do with time and
Yeah,
all these
yeah.
multiverses. Still, I found that concept quite interesting actually because I'd never heard of a ontological paradox before. But yeah, very interesting. So some questions I had is, what was the point of the mind wipe He Who Remains did on Ravona? Did he just want to keep it casual with her? Lol. Or like, what was the point of the mind wipe with her in particular?
I think partly it's down to, at times, you all kind of really see it with like villains, and sometimes you see it with heroes, that they try and forgo all forms of attachments because they know like what it costs and what it means.
Yeah.
And I think at times that he realized like it's either that he wanted all the power to himself and wanted to control everything, but technically he still could have controlled everything without wiping their minds. Like he could have just wiped everyone else's apart from Renslayer's, or potentially if he saw Renslayer as a threat, could have just killed her.
I guess it stops the any threats from coming in, any acts of consciousness as well. Like, what am I doing? Oh, this is so wrong, you know.
But I also think he wiped their memories partly so he could step back and have like a protective barrier, so you could have, you know, the three aliens, which part of the Time
illusion.
Council.
Yeah.
So he could then step back and then have one way of like protection, so therefore no one knows who he actually is. And also, I think that's the main reason. He just wanted to have like an extra layer of protection, and to have their minds wiped. Then therefore, if they've all forgotten about him, they then can't rebel and see him destroyed or someone to replace him.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess there's a good theory that's to stop like internal opposition, but also people like having a crisis of conscience as well. Good moves, bit of brainwashing. Lol, Mobius and Pi again. Like, he's such a comfort eater. And I love it when Sylvia had a go at him when he suggested, let's have some pie. Yeah, she really went at him. It was a bit like, I really like that you get the real emotional impact there, and like the camera angles and stuff. Like when people are having a proper argument, they really like zoom in, and like it has such a good effect. And the way they have that doorway behind her as well,
Yeah.
you know, the pie room. Or I assume it was the pie room. Yeah, very cool. It felt very touching. And there's moments of emotional impact. They always have some of that Nordic sounding soundtrack in the end. You know, it's called. I've been listening to the soundtrack recently. I think it's called Glorious Purpose, where that comes from, the soundtrack. Very good. Question for you: what's your favorite kind of pie? As we're back on pie again.
I had my sister made like a pecan pie that she got the recipe because we're not too far away from Thanksgiving, so that was really nice.
Very on point, very traditional.
But then the issue with pies, especially in the UK, is that Americans mostly see pie as dessert, but we see it potentially as a meal as well, as savory as well. So I'd have to say, like, my favorite would have to be like a Greg's steak bake.
Oh,
would be my favorite.
I actually haven't tried a Greg's steak bake. I do love their pastries and pasties. God, I sound like I don't eat Greg's. I sound like when a politicians get asked like, "What's your favorite McDonald's burger?" and they say something fake because you just know they're not human beings. I like the cheese and onion one. That's good. Or the sausage rolls. I'm a human. I'm not a robot. But yeah, I'd say my favorite kind of pie has to be probably a chicken and leek pie.
Okay.
Yeah, I quite like those. Those can be quite nice. Or a fish pie. But I don't really eat them that much. But let's not talk about pie this whole time. Anything else to say about episode 4?
I would say one thing I did like about it was it always kept you on your feet, especially because when Renslayer kidnaps with Miss Minutes, Victor Timely, I thought, okay, so this is the direction the TV series is going to take, is that this is how they're going to bring back He Who Remains. And like when when Renslayer then gets pruned and then Miss Minutes gets reset, I'm like, whoa, so maybe that's not what's going to happen. So I think the reason I really loved the season as a whole, and especially this episode, was that multiple things happened that I was thinking, you know, in your mind when you're watching a TV series, you're like, okay, so that's how they're going to knit those two things together.
Yeah, you start to recognize patterns.
Yeah. And then actually the patterns were broken, especially like with Victor Timely being spaghettified as well.
Yeah,
and
exactly. It's like, oh, well, there
and
goes
then
that.
and then the fact that you actually thought that potentially the Victor Timely would then be used to make He Who Remains again, and that being controlled by Miss Minutes and Renslayer, but actually that's not happening either.
Yeah. This is a very good point, actually. It's almost like exactly like the times and the variants that it really is keeping you on edge. It wasn't following logical patterns of like, you know, you start to predict the outcome in a TV show because it starts to get all Hollywoody and follows cliches.
Yes. Yeah.
This was kind of did keep you on your toes. There was one more thing I wanted to point out. What the hell? Why was Victor Timely so interested in the cocoa machine? Is that just because he's from the 1800s? You know, he's like, his is a hot cocoa machine and he wants to go out and get one very specifically.
I think possibly because like during his period, I think that's when like coffee started to like really hit off in America.
Yeah.
So maybe that's like the main reason. I think another reason I'd really love like his character is like the fact that they were trying to like convince him and he's like, who do you think? Yeah, I am. I'm from the shiestiest city in the whole of America.
Chicago, baby.
Like, I'm from Chicago. You can't pull the wool over my eyes. Like,
yeah, that was a good saying, actually. Yeah, it was very funny. I quite liked his interpretation of Victor Timely, the stuttering and like sort of the light-hearted gentleness, like kind of like a dandy of the Victorian era. You know, very like posh, but almost to the point of being awkward and uncomfortable. Yeah.
And just to go back to like episode 3, I think it was really hilarious, especially like when you or it maybe might have been it was episode 3 when you actually thought that he was going to be this big, powerful, bad guy, and then all you see is like a stuttering scientist who is very impressionable, and then you actually start to realize that no, actually that. Is he a bad guy? And then also when it's not Siri. So I think about with The Witcher now.
Or you just think about Siri on the iPhone?
On iPhone, yeah.
Do you mean Miss Minutes?
That when Sylvie tries to kill him, they put into your mind that no, he isn't the same as He Who Remains. Yeah. Or even the Kang that we saw in like the Ant-Man film, that this person is a completely different person. Because those two were very confident in themselves and were very arrogant.
Yeah.
But he was more like someone who was extremely smart, but was also quite timid as well. Especially if he saw like any form of violence, he would then retreat into a shell.
Yeah, it's like, you know, even though he's the same character, but not. It's, you know, I hate two-dimensional characters that they're just evil or they're just good. I like characters where they're a bit, you know, I mean, he seems like a good version of Kang, but if you think of Kang as one character, this is the 3-dimension of it, if that makes sense, which is good storytelling. Okay, episode 5, science-fiction. So Loki survives the explosion, but everyone else has vanished, and a TVA headquarters spaghettifies. Loki escapes as he begins time-slipping again, taking him to the branch timelines where he finds his friends, Mobius, Hunter B-15, Casey, Ouroboros, where they were reset to their original lives as Don, Dr. Verity Willis, Frank Morris, and Dr. A.D. Doug, respectively, or Doug. Wanting to time slip to before the explosion, Loki enlists Doug's help. With Loki unable to control his time slipping, Doug proposes Loki gather everyone present at the explosion back together so that their collective temporal aura can send them back to the right time and place. Doug builds a tempad using a TVA guidebook that Loki kept. Loki succeeds in gathering everyone else to Doug's workshop except Sylvie, who has retained her memories. Refusing to help, Sylvie gets Loki to admit his true motivation. He wants his friends back and fears being alone. Aww. When everything in Sylvie's timeline starts spaghettifying, that's a great scene, we'll go into that in a second, she gets help from Loki. However, Doug's workshop also spaghettifies, as do Frank, Doug, Don, Willis, and Sylvie. Loki finally controls his time slipping by focusing on a person, declaring that he can rewrite the story. Loki time slips to literally that moment just before Victor Timely was going to go out to the loom and get spaghettified. Wow. I mean, I really like this episode. Call that sort of ticking clock and that approaching spaghettification. Like that scene I just touched on of Sylvia in the record shop, listening to that really depressing but cool tune. Awesome. Really dark, really cool. And you get to see everyone's lives as well, like who they were finally. Like I spent this whole time thinking, like, what the hell was Mobius doing before this?
They're selling jet skis.
Yeah, a very simple. I like Mobius' character because he's very simple and kind of funny and kind of lighthearted, and he's a comfort eater who really loves pie. That was cool.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing is like Doug and Ouroboros, you could kind of see how he is Ouroboros. The fact that he's someone who's got like PhDs in astrophysics, and the fact that he actually enjoys writing sci-fi novels.
Yeah,
and it's like,
great.
I got that. I got the PhD and all that malarkey just to pay the rent. But my real job is writing fantasy books and sci-fi books. I think that was very, very funny. And also the fact that Hunter 15 was a doctor.
Yeah.
So you actually get to see like how she's linked to it. And then you also see like with Mobius, the amount of times he talks about jet skis throughout his whole time, and you realize he's an actual jet ski salesman, and you see how that crosses over. But the only one who doesn't really cross over is Casey. The fact that he's like someone who's trying to escape Alcatraz.
Yeah.
And it's like
he comes across as so innocent in the TVA.
But what his complete change of character when you see him, the fact that he's trying to escape Alcatraz, and it's weird because like Loki's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, who are you talking to? And like the guy's like, wait, I thought your name was this. He's like, yeah, my name is that. Because like you have to think about it, that for Loki, it must have been a real trip to see them and then realize, wait a second, no, this isn't actually them. This is who they would have been if they hadn't been taken away and moved into the TVA.
Yeah, and I liked it how that time slipping hadn't affected Sylvie, because I guess she's a god as well. Well, she is Loki, who maybe she can control time. Why is it this variant of Loki can control time?
That's another thing I was going to ask. Is it written that he was supposed to do this? And that's kind of why Kang was like, someone needs to take over my job.
And he thought Loki could be it.
And so I think that's what he has been banging on about, is that someone needed to do this job. And it's either, if someone doesn't do it, then there will be all-out destruction. And if not, then they should just leave him alive. And I think he might have chosen Loki. Because it's just weird, like, because throughout the season 1, they were like, Sylvie is the more stronger, the better, the smarter Loki. And like, they were like, oh no, Sylvie's the actual Loki, you're just some side Loki. And like, even you saw it when you see like Kid Loki, who's
Crocker Loki.
And Crocker Loki as well. And then Kid Loki is killed, he actually killed Thor. Even though the Loki that we're tuned to has come nowhere near. And you could kind of say it's a disappointment.
Yeah, you're right. There's like a crisis of confidence about Loki in the first season.
Yeah.
Whilst in the second season, you feel like this time slip thing's kind of like him about gaining confidence and finding his glorious purpose, which we're going to touch on in episode 6.
But I also think the reason why he's got the time slipping abilities is that the question is, why does he have it and Sylvie doesn't? Because both of them came through the Tempads after He Who Remains had been killed. So he gets kicked out before by Sylvie. Then Sylvie leaves to enjoy her life in working in McDonald's. But then
was that said in irony in any way?
Yeah, it was.
Sorry, no offense to any. Yes.
Of all the places. But yeah, like, why does Loki have it and she doesn't? I think that's the big question for me, is like, did He Who Remains want Loki to have it from the get-go?
I don't know. Maybe if there's a series fee, it'll be explained, because, well, when we talk about episode 6, perhaps we'll find the answer together. What else was cool about this episode? Kind of like how it just, like, the sort of storyline gets shattered, and then it's like, it kind of goes into not like a bottleneck episode, but an episode where it's just one character's in every scene.
Yeah.
And Loki is the base that unites them all, because he has to be. And I like that. So yeah, Loki just comes across as like the focal point for the whole episode, and it seems about him sort of building his confidence in a way and finding his glorious purpose, which we will talk about very shortly.
Just
Episode
quickly,
6.
one thing I did like about the episode was Ouroboros trying to get his book and then
Yeah, he just like brings it, puts it on the shelf.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how come it's not on your system yet?
He said, "Oh no, just leave it on the shelf. Someone might like it."
Yeah, I mean, like today, he was a science fiction writer because it made me think of. There's a lot of people out there who, you know, are computer scientists. They've got PhDs in computer science, or they're physicists or something like that, and they delve into the world of science fiction, and that's amazing because they want to see their science come to life. So, for example, this is a bit of a novel point, but Futurama, if you look at like the group of writers and producers, about I think like it was 8 of them have master's degrees, 5 of them have PhDs. Like, although it is a very comical, farcical show, there's people who have great scientific knowledge, or at least knowledge of computers, etc. That have actually got some inspired idea from real science. So, although Futurama is definitely not what the future's going to be looking like.
Hopefully not.
There's more of a grain of truth, or at least vision in it, compared to something that's written by someone who's just a writer.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, especially with like fantasy, you see with, I think like George R. R. Martin has a huge interest in history, has studied history.
Yeah, Tolkien could speak lots of languages. Yeah.
And Tolkien had studied history as well.
Yeah.
Studied the history of fantasy in different parts of the world.
Oh wow!
And
okay.
you even saw it. I think he took elements of like Irish folklore, Welsh folklore, British folklore, and like even Norse folklore for like the men of Rohan as well.
Yeah.
And I think if someone really loves a topic, you can actually kind of see it in their writing, because you can see it peer in. It's like George R. R. Martin. You can see that he is someone who enjoys history, because you see how well he writes the historical events, whether it's battle scenes, how well he can describe it, how well he can describe like banquets in the whole A Song of Ice and Fire series as well, which is amazing.
Yeah, I love it when he's talking about food. I love it when writers talking about food. It just makes my mouth water so much.
Yeah.
So, episode 6. So, the synopsis is, Loki time slips to the moment before the temporal loom explosion that we saw at the end of episode 4. Despite his attempts, the loom always fails to accommodate the infinite branches. Loki slips to the moment before Sylvie kills He Who Remains, which is so cool, who tells Loki that the loom is a failsafe. Overloading it protects the sacred timeline by deleting the branches along with the TVA. He Who Remains suggests Loki kill Sylvie to save the loom, which Loki rejects. After consulting Mobius and Sylvie at different moments in time, Loki replaces Timely in approaching the loom. Loki destroys the loom, magically rejuvenating the dying timelines, and rearranges them into a tree-like structure, committing himself to oversee the branches alone till the end of time. The TVA accepts the growing branches and now tracks He Who Remains variants, with Mobius reporting one variant being stopped at Earth's 616's adjacent realm. Okay, I need to ask you about that. B-15 becomes one of the TVA's leaders. Ouroboros reactivates a now friendly Miss Minutes and writes a new TVA handbook with Timely as co-author. In one timeline, Timely does not receive the TVA handbook in 1863. Renslayer awakens in the void and sees Aelioth, the weird cloud thing that eats everything, so that's not good for her. Mobius retires from the TVA. He and Sylvie observe Don and his children from a distance. And wow, that's what an ending.
Yeah.
Like, let's start from the beginning of that, because we should do that chronologically, give it the respect it deserves, because it was a great episode.
It was.
So, like, the time slipping of, like, him attempting to, like, save the loom.
That was amazing and also hilarious as well.
Just the constant Victor Timely. Just like, like, just that montage was so funny. And the song they had for it as well was really good. Like,
and it was like, Loki was like, all right, get on, let's get on with it. And he's like, yes, you need to take this, you need to hold that, and you need to remember this. And they're like, Loki, what's the matter with you? Do you know something? And the fact that I think Tom Hiddleston did really well was like the anxiety that he was able to portray, and the fact that you could see each time he became even more frustrated.
Yeah.
And then the fact that
his body language.
Ouroboros was like, oh, for you to understand this, you need to. It took me 400 years. And the fact he actually then time slipped 400 years in advance to learn everything, and he'd learned everything, but still wasn't able to then protect the actual stop the time loop from exploding.
Yeah.
And you then kind of see, like, I think the reason why He Who Remains like wiped everybody's memory, I think was because to protect the timeline. Because then by wiping their memories, they would forget who he is. So therefore, it means that if everyone forgot who he was, that means that no one would then kill him and then cause what happened to take place.
Right.
But what happened is that he was tired, and I think what he actually wanted was someone to take his place, so therefore he could go around being himself again. And I think he just got tired of just sitting in a chair at the end of time, making sure everything fits its designed purpose. So I think that's what he really wanted, was someone to take his place, and that a younger version of him could crop up and then be able to then travel the galaxy, take over the universe if he wants to.
And then become the new humans. But before we get to that, so when Loki actually decides this isn't working, like he's tried after that funny montage, he slips to the moment before Sylvie kills the humans, and that was really cool that he slipped to that, because I actually liked that whole interaction, just the sort of the inevitability. Oh, I'm not going to push this. Go away, Thanos. The inevitability of no matter what, Sylvie will always kill He Who Remains, and I was starting to think, oh god, he's going to have to kill Sylvie. This is going to get so tragic. I was thinking, God, that would be such a cool dark turn for Loki, that he just kills Sylvie, because there's been this whole like blossoming love thing between him and her. Although one of my views of this whole season is like the love thing's kind of gone between them, you know.
Yeah. I think Loki realized something that he had that also I think He Who Remains realized, that if you want this position, you have to be fully detached.
Yeah, like He Who Remains, like what he does.
And also you realize like how powerful He Who Remains is, like the fact that he then understood time slipping, knew how to use it, and then used it to stop Sylvie in her tracks. So like this whole time, he could have just stopped time for both of them, and then just killed either one of them if he wanted to. But
he was bored and didn't want to do that job anymore.
Yeah, and that, like, you know, when she tried to stab him, like in season 1, and he's in the elevator, and he's like, "Whoops, missed." It was him time slipping. That's what he was doing. Because I thought he was teleporting, but I think what he was doing was time slipping, and then he time slipped to a later point where he was somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think it's just ridiculous, like how powerful he was, that he built a failsafe in his plan that the loom would break,
and he'd always die,
and Loki would come to see him eventually, and then Loki would still have to take the choice, take his seat or prevent Sylvie from killing him. And the fact of the matter is that she's so stubborn, like
she's the most stubborn person I think in any science fiction universe. Like, holy cow. And I love the inevitability of it. In a alternate episode, I would have loved to have seen like Loki just really tragically have to kill her, and like he becomes like He Who Remains and the leader of the TVA, and it's like, even though he's doing it for a good cause, he still feels like a bad guy, you know. That probably would have made me cry. So then He Who Remains suggests Loki kill Sylvie to save him, which Loki rejects. After consulting Mobius and Sylvie at different moments in time, Loki replaces Timely in approaching the loom, and that god, this was a great scene. Like, what he says, time for me to become the god that everyone needs me to be. And just like, he just gets his ass out there and just, fuck this! And just like, just fully just uses his power and just steps in and like, makes the ultimate sacrifice. Because I assume if he leaves, he goes there, takes all the branches, weaves them into a tree, and he has to stay there, well, forever. Like, he won't die of I assume he doesn't die of old age. What a sacrifice, honestly. And there's a tragedy in that as well.
It is a major tragedy, because like he set out to save the TVA, to save like one timeline, because if the timelines branch out, there'd be too many. and therefore all of time would be wiped out, and all the lives on each timeline would be wiped out. And you can kind of understand why, especially like if you watch Doctor Strange. Like in Doctor Strange, the film, timelines can be wiped from existence, but they say universes, and I think this is something we've mentioned on our podcast, that they need to understand and tell us what's the difference between like a universe, a world, or a timeline. And like, is a timeline linked to a specific universe, or can one universe have multiple timelines? But in Doctor Strange, what happens is that the Doctor Strange of another universe had caused an incursion, so he'd taken power from another universe, and because of that incursion, two timelines were then converging on each other, and therefore only one of them could remain. And because he had done that, a timeline full of trillions of beings disappeared. So you could probably see that the reason why He Who Remains had one sacred timeline was because if there's other versions of him, there were also other versions of Thanos's. Like, how many Thanoses would there be if the branches branched out to its full length? Because they said it was growing exponentially.
But then could Thanos ever have been like a existential threat to the TVA and He Who Remains? Because even those Infinity Stones, they're literally just paperweights. Like, does that technically mean if Thanos was in Loki's place, would he have been like a dangerous character to contend with?
Yes. So the thing is, Thanos is stronger than Loki, even when Loki is... So like, without the stones, on even footing, Thanos is stronger than Loki. But I think the issue is that the stones don't work in the TVA because they're outside of time.
Yeah.
So what could potentially happen is that, what if a Thanos takes Kang's technology? I think that's the issue with Kang, is that, and also like He Who Remains, it's all technology based.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if like a Ultron gets its hands on tech that's linked to
an iPhone.
Well,
yeah, just all they
bringing
need.
back Siri into the conversation.
Yeah, there we go.
Like if Ultron was able to then get the powers of Kang through his technology, and you kind of see this in the Ant-Man film Quantumania, that Kang actually has a ship that can time travel and can go through space and time, but it's damaged. But imagine if Thanos found Kang's ship, and that's probably why you have like the Council of Kangs, to make sure that not someone who isn't Kang or an unworthy Kang doesn't get a time traveling device. If you just think about it, like,
it's like nuclear weapons, isn't it? Yeah.
Like if Ultron, in his human and organic life-hating ways, got hold of something that could help him to teleport to all of space and time,
like a tempad, yeah. That'd be nuts. They've got to be really careful to hold on to that crap. Yeah. Got to wonder if like that there could be some spin-offs of the TVA. Just meant TV shows about the TVA where something's gone wrong. But yeah, God, what a good episode. And I just love the ending as well, like Sylvie and Mobius just staring out looking at the kids and stuff, and just like the sadness that you feel for Loki, with like the glory, he's found his glorious purpose, but it's condemned him really to being there forever.
Yeah, and then constantly just, it's also the sadness of like, imagine being like an observer of all time. Like, you kind of see it sometimes with Doctor Who. Like, in certain scenes in Doctor Who.
Right, it's like binge watching TV shows all day, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I think, like, with Doctor Who, he's even said that at times it's kind of like heartbreaking for him, especially when his companions die.
Yeah.
And also knowing that the companions he has, he's going to see them age, and die. And, like, he will continue onwards, civilizations will die, planets will just be destroyed, but he's still there.
And maybe this is why He Who Remains was sick of it all and wanted Loki or someone else to take over eventually. Yeah,
because like, it's annoying. It was probably also annoying just being on the sidelines. Like, Loki has all this power, but because he's tied to like the chair, it's like someone was saying, it's kind of similar to the story of like Atlas. And like with Hercules and like in Greek mythology, Atlas is holding up the sky and he was tricked into it by Zeus. So what happens is that he can't he can't drop the sky because everything will die, including himself. And I think Atlas does have kids as well, so they would also die. So he's stuck with this task of all time, holding up the sky. He tricks Hercules into switching with him, but Hercules then tricks him to switch back. But I think that's kind of like the position that Thanos is in. Not Thanos, Loki's in.
Yeah.
I think you also said it's
slip.
similar to like the Emperor of Man in Warhammer, that he's now stuck in the chair and now can't get up out of that chair.
Oh god damn it! I was thinking this was really original. The ending of Loki. they've stolen it from Atlas. They've stolen it from the Emperor of Mankind and Warhammer.
Because like I was watching like a video about it, and like the fact that he sacrifices himself to have to sit in that chair for all of time.
Well, it's ironic because that's such a spoiler.
Oh, okay.
But I'll tell you about it after this. But yeah, I like that tragedy, the omnipresent ruler, but they're not doing it for power. They're kind of doomed in their role.
Yeah.
I like that sort of the Greek tragedy element of it. And I wonder if they did get inspiration from Atlas there. That seems like an almost completely parallel story.
Yeah, and the fact that he, like, all the people he loves, like Thor, his brother, he can see his father. He can see alternate versions of his father.
Mum as well.
His mum that he loves as well. Sylvie, his friends, like he can see all of that, but do nothing about it. Like as you said, like imagine like being on the sidelines and seeing your life as a TV show and all the people that you love as a TV show. It's like that's what he's done, and like and I think that's why people say that was the best character arc in Marvel. Seeing his transformation from this guy who only cares about himself, who's a bit mischievous.
The main villain in the first Avengers movie.
Yeah, and like in like the first Thor film, he was just like this mischievous guy who's trying to kill his brother Thor and make him look bad, into someone who's now, funnily enough, like people saying technically he wasn't the main villain. Like Thanos was the main villain. In the first Avengers.
Because he was just a puppet of Thanos, wasn't he? Yeah.
And the fact that he basically was like, you know what, I want to have Earth, and Thanos will give it to me if I do his bidding. And then for him to then, once he's arrested and goes back to Asgard, to then speak to his mum, and then his mum basically tell him, like, this isn't who you are. And then him learning, like, no, this isn't who I am. And then you start to see him change who he is in like the first, like in the third Thor film, and even in like the second,
and
even in
Thanos,
the second,
Thanos kills him.
Yeah, so you can kind of see like him being good is a part of him.
Yeah, so what a like massive character arc, and really impressed. And Tom Hiddleston, great actor. Even in this, he's shone very well, and I just love him. I think he's such a gem of an actor. I need to see him in some other stuff other than Loki, because to me he'll always be the god of mischief. Loki.
I did see him, like BBC did this whole adaptation of,
was it the Night Shift Man or something?
No, of Shakespeare's plays. So he played I think he played Henry V.
Right.
And I think they also brought, I think Benedict Cumberbatch was also in it as well, so it's kind of like a whole Marvel theme to it as well. But yeah,
such a contrast.
I did see him,
Marvel.
I did see him in that, and it was like, I think it came out after the first Thor film, so I was like, yeah, like you actually see that he's a very good actor, and I think I actually checked back and watched some of the stuff that he'd done as Loki, like with the Avengers and the first Thor film. You actually see like better portrayal of Loki, especially after the second film. That in the third film you actually get to see more of Loki as the character that we love.
Script writing, or
I think it was like Marvel was like, because like there were rumors that like Tom Hiddleston didn't want to continue as Loki because he was like, I want to be able to act and not just like stand around and say these one-liners here
and be typecast for
So I think they were like, you know what, we will give you a full through like the third film, and then we'll give you the 2 series to actually show off your acting skills and also show the character of Loki as well.
And boy has he done it. He's aced it so well. And just as you know, as we're at the end of the show, what do you think the Rotten Tomatoes score was, the critic score for Loki season 2?
I would say 67.
81%.
81%.
Wow. Such a lot. Usually quite good, but you're off.
It's because, like, I remember the article you shared with me that gave
3
it,
out
like,
of 5.
yeah, and I was like, is that what everyone thinks? But yeah, if it's that high, then what were they complaining about?
Yeah, I know. I find, and there was also the audience. Well, the audience score at the time was also 81%. So I was quite surprised by that. Because that Guardian article gave it 3 out of 5 and said the series lacked a bit of its humor, which maybe it did. It was a bit more of a serious tone this series, but I felt like that kind of worked in the end for it. Whilst I think season 1 was a lot more of a comedic tone about it. But even still, there's a lot of comedy. Like, for example, the final episode of him just trying to, like, the constant Victor Timely just going out. That was so funny. I was in hysterics watching that.
Yeah, and like the amount of times he's had to like direct Victor Timely and say, "Oh, don't drop that. Make sure you have this.
Yeah,
make sure this is tied properly."
Micromanaging. Yeah, I get the stresses of micromanaging. And the whole idea of spaghettification, I love that. Never heard of it before, but it's a phrase I've got to use more often. What do you think? Do you think there's going to be a Loki season 3, or they're going to leave it there?
I think they're just going to leave it there.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with that.
And I think the way they said it was that it either would have been split into 2 parts, like season 1 or season 2, or just have one straight season. But I'm glad they did actually split it into 2 individual parts, because if it was like one season, I think we wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. Because I think at times when, like, if they have like one season and it has loads of information in it, you then don't have time for that information to like rest or sit in.
Yeah, give it its proper due. Yeah. Sometimes if too much goes on as well. Like I felt that with Andor. Andor was really good, but it's kind of a lot in one season because you have a heist, a prison break, and then like a rebellion all in one. And whilst it was really good, I felt like maybe they could have split that into maybe 2 seasons or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it was awesome, but it was a lot.
A lot. Oh, yeah, all taking place within a short period of time. And just thinking about Andor's luck, like literally the fact that he has to escape a planet just because of like the connections of like his adopted mother, and also because he's been tapping into specific information. He's then on the run, takes part in a heist that ends up going well, but then ended poorly because I think apart from that one woman, everybody else ended up dead.
Yeah.
And then ends up getting arrested when he's actually trying to enjoy the money from this heist.
Chilling at that beach resort place. Yeah.
It's like someone would say the Force is purposely trying to screw with him the whole time.
Oh, yeah. That's what you get for just believing in money. So do you think, fair enough, we won't get more of Loki, the TV show, but will we get more of this variant of Loki throughout the next Marvel movies, the next phase? Or is it that he's always going to be in the background, but we might get other variants of Loki?
I think we'll probably get other variants of Loki, but I potentially could think if they are going to bring in God Loki, who's in charge of time, they would have to bring in some of the heavy hitters in the Marvel universe. So, like, for example, some of the Celestials who are like full-on powerful beings that can destroy like half of the universe.
Yeah.
So it would have to be such an extensive threat that it could take out time. So maybe if He Who Remains, we find out that his major plot was that he also wanted to be free of the having to control time, and now wants to take over each individual universe one at a time. Then you could possibly see...
Oh, God, that's a big job.
You could possibly see Loki potentially getting more involved and more hands-on.
Yeah, I guess so. Because I guess there's still the issue of Kang. Even though he's controlling all the timelines, is Kang still going to appear and be an issue for him?
True. Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean? Because he's existing in the plane of whatever spatial dimension outside of time that the TVA is in, and where He Who Remains is dead.
Yeah.
And therefore, if he's holding on to... Is Kang still going to come?
That is actually a very good question. And I think only He Who Remains knows about the TVA. I think all the other Kangs don't know the TVA exists.
I suppose, because by that point, He Who Remains had won.
Yeah.
I don't know. That leaves so many questions.
It does. And also, like, leaves questions in like the direction of where Marvel's going, because it kind of feels like even though Loki season 2 happened after the Ant-Man film, it seems as if it happened before it. So then that's why you were able to see like the multiple Kangs at the end of the Ant-Man film, was because Loki is holding all these different threads of time together. So therefore there's multiple timelines, which could then lead to the point that did Loki season 2 happen before the second Doctor Strange film, where he then can go, where Doctor Strange goes to multiple universes and goes basically, and then one of the characters, America Chavez, she jumps from universe to universe. So then gets you thinking that if what Loki season 2 happens before those two films happen, and even before the Spider-Man film happens, does that then mean that now we're going to be flooded with multiple Kangs? We're going to be flooded with, is this how Marvel's going to bring the X-Men into Marvel, the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Is this how they're going to bring the Fantastic Four? Is this how they're going to bring like characters like Doctor Doom?
If it's like a tree, then I guess if it's like a tree, it'll just keep growing. So more of those threads will grow in.
Yeah, and like the only Marvel film coming out next year is the Deadpool Wolverine film.
Yeah.
And that's going to be in the MCU. So is what Loki did enabling the X-Men and mutants to be brought into the MCU?
But it seems like it's also kind of like with Sylvie killing He Who Remains, dooming everything. Has he actually just doomed everyone? Because now all the Kangs are going to like, this is their ticket in. Well, gee, thanks, Loki. Well done.
Finish him!
Idiot.
Well, technically, it's all Sylvie's fault to begin with.
Yeah, I mean,
she could have just.
But she's also Loki.
Technically, yes.
Damn it, Loki, you're the worst. He's also the best. Also, very conflicted character. But I've got to admit, I really love Loki, and that was a fantastic series. Like, I had my doubts after I sent you that 3 out of 5 star review, but I think it was good. Any other general observations about the season before we wrap up?
I would just say that it really does open the door to what Marvel could do next. And I think also, hopefully they take lessons from this season. I think it had everyone on their toes. It kept people surprised at each individual episode. They were very quirky, funny moments, especially like in the Ferris wheel in episode 3 when they're trying to capture Victor Timely and he hops into the Ferris wheel and then the people are trying to get him hop in that as well. And I think it had like really heart-wrenching, like serious moments, especially like when, as you said,
Sylvia's having a go at Mobius.
Yeah, or when she's in like the record store trying to like get through the trauma she's been through, and then that just gets completely spaghettified. That they learn from this, and like every future TV series and film won't be like, oh, so this is how they're going to take this. Oh, this is how the good guys are going to win. So then they make it more of like keeping us guessing throughout.
Yeah, staying away from that classic superhero movie dialogue and progress of the superhero. Like starts out small. There's a big supervillain beats him down, and then always ends with the superhero winning. At the end. And with this, it's like the ending's like kind of quite bleak, isn't it? Because you feel really bad for Loki, don't you? And there's a tragedy to it, and it's different. It's good. Story's different and the ending's different. You know, and people like that. So for example, Infinity War was fantastic because the ending's like, oh my god, Thanos won. It was such a good cliffhanger. But and then even, of course they're just
even with Endgame with like Tony Stark sacrificing his life, and that was a big shock for everybody.
Yeah, because they actually killed her. There wasn't plot armor. There was no plot armor.
And I think another one that's very similar that we also need to do an episode on, Lord of the Rings. Like the way it ends, they defeat Sauron, but the fact that that Frodo ends up leaving and then leaves Sam and has to go away, as in like that was like a key part of the story. So like you had that happy ending, but there was also the sadness of like
a bittersweetness.
Yeah, that Frodo, because of like, and also Bilbo Baggins, because of their connection to the ring, and also because of like them not fitting into the world anymore, that they actually left. And also you did see it like when the hobbits arrived back in the Shire, because of all the experiences they had, even though they'd won, they didn't feel at home because people were like celebrating, oh, look how large my pumpkin is. And it's like, we've just defeated a Dark Lord and saved the whole world, but all you give a damn about is a freaking pumpkin. And like everyone outside the Shire is like, oh my days, these hobbits are amazing. They did so wonderful work. But inside the Shire, it's like, oh, it's just those weirdos who went on that adventure and came back with nothing.
My friends who bow to no one, apart from the Shire folk, apparently.
Yeah.
Your own people. What a-holes, guide. Well, we're going to leave it there. But I've got to say, there's very few moments like this where I feel like, Loki, we salute you.
Yes.
And even though Thanos was inevitable, you'll inevitably be there at the end of time in my heart. Thank you, Loki. I feel like he's almost a real person now. It hurts too much. And
gone too soon.
Yeah, just like Harambe. Harambe, are you okay? And, you know, at times like these, when I get all sentimental, it makes me think of you, our audience, you know. We've got this far. It's been over a year. More than that, in fact.
Yes,
and
it has been.
we've really grown. Like how many subscribers we've got for the show, and we had to do some reorganization recently, but we're growing back to where we were before.
Yep.
And we've done some really good events. We've been to MCM Comic Con together. We did some cool interviews there, saw some hilarious stuff, and we're also branching out into some more gaming stuff as well, and history. And we'll be doing a gaming episode very soon where I'll be showing some very good couch party games, and we'll be doing that right here in the studio, hopefully with some very fun, special, loving guests. But, you know, if you really like us, show us to your friends. Give us a share and say, check out these two idiots. Sometimes they're funny. And get them to give us a like, subscribe, and click the notification button when you want to see when we've got the next episode out. And, you know, for those with cash money, you know where to send it. Oh, yeah, baby. Right here.
I am inevitable.
And on that note, that's all, folks.
See you, folks.
Good evening.